They're going to Google you, and then they're going to stalk you. They're going to find you on LinkedIn. They're going to get retargeted by an ad. Everything has their hands in the bucket now. So I would say the buyer's process has gotten more complicated to track, but certainly it's evolved, right? Your buyer typically is going to go look at a couple different sources. They're going to make a really informed decision.
You're listening to Content Logistics, a podcast for B2B marketers where we explore the foundational and sometimes frustrating elements of content. We're talking to the experts, learning all their tips and tricks. We don't gatekeep here. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of Content Logistics. This is your host, Baylee Gunnell. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the very hot topic of how AI-driven tools like ChatGPT and AI featured snippets on Google are really transforming the way search is working. We cover a lot of topics specifically about how buyer behavior has been changing a lot in the last year. There are lots of hot takes on just website formatting and content that I think you'll really enjoy. Today's guest is David Riggs. David really is an expert in this space. He has his own SEO and content agency, Pneuma, that is on the Fortune 5000 list. Just an interesting fact about him, he was once a TEDx speaker coach, and I'll let him introduce himself when we get to the actual recording. But let's go ahead and get started. Hey, David, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Well, today we're going to talk about the search economy. For listeners who maybe haven't heard about that, David's definitely going to explain that. But we're going to start off by just talking about how has this landscape changed? So much has evolved in the last, just year, really.
Well, I just got off a client call and we were talking about even the number of algorithm updates specifically for search have happened this year. You know, it seems like, I'm sure you have a favorite board game. I don't know what it is. Mine's Monopoly. It would be like, you know, you play Monopoly throughout the year and every other month, the rules not only slightly change, but it seems like drastically change. And then they change again and they change again. So all of that change, I think, has definitely led us down some interesting paths as an agency to understand what works, what doesn't. But the exciting thing, and we'll definitely get into it today, what still works through all 5 of those changes, I think, has become more strong today. It has more of an impact today. And it's some of those truths that I don't think have gone anywhere. They're still there. Clients are still using them, but they're still creating an impact. So I'm excited to dive into some of that stuff. But yeah, literally just chatting about how much the rule book has changed this year and even last year as well.
Yeah, it's really challenging to keep up with. Would you say that the buyer's journey has also evolved a lot in the last year?
I'd say the buyer's gotten, at least from what we're seeing, let's go all the way back 2020 when I started the agency, but 2021, you could very confidently use last click attribution, the last person that somebody was, to attribute where the lead was coming from. And I would say you were make decisions with 95% accuracy. That is so much different today. It's like the buyer's process has, complex might not be the right word, but the buyer's gotten choosy. But in the heart of the search economy, one of the things that we always call it is that your buyer's smart. They're intelligent. The days of just Googling roofers near me is the example I always use, but you could throw in anything to that and just capturing the search and the lead. Those days are long gone. They're going to Google you, and then they're going to stalk you. They're going to find you on LinkedIn. They're going to get retargeted by an ad. Everything has their hands in the bucket now. So I would say the buyer's process has gotten more complicated to track, but certainly it's evolved, right? Your buyer typically is going to go look at a couple different sources. They're going to make a really informed decision. And I don't think that's ever changed. The variable that's changed is there's just so much more information to base a decision off of. If I want to be informed, it's not just Googling, it's Google and Instagram and LinkedIn and all these other things as well. So we're finding time and time again with our clients when we get feedback from them, like any customer that comes through that's a good customer, sure, they might find them on search, but they're finding them in a number of different ways as well. Everything can contribute to getting that win, so to speak.
Yeah, it definitely has gotten a lot more complicated to track. I want to maybe hop back a step, David, and maybe just have you introduce yourself to people who don't.
We're jumping right into content, which is my type of conversation. Yeah, totally. My name is David. I'm the CEO at a company called Pneuma. We primarily work with, I would say, any service-based company or a company that has some level of services to it, work across a wide range of industries on specifically SEO, paid, and web. The goal, or really what we try working into or building into, is something that we call the search economy. You've worked, you not being Bailey, but you being the listener, have worked hard on whatever your solution is to the problem that a customer has. And when that customer feels that problem, there's a moment where they go and try and search for the answer. And overwhelmingly, people go to Google. But in general, people search. I think Google will change, but the action of searching for insight, searching for knowledge, and searching for the right decision won't. So we try looking at, who our clients are and who we market for as an experiment, and what are those customers searching in that still small moment right before they finally admit they have a problem and they're looking for their solution. What crosses their mind? Are they scared? Are they excited? Do they know what they're searching? What are they searching for? A lot of times they're not searching for your name. They're searching for some type of search term that's relevant to you, but maybe it's a pain point. Maybe it's something about the way you serve a client. Maybe it's a location. There are a lot of different things that people look for, but I always say in that moment right before someone admits they have a pain point, that's what we target. That's what we focus on. And we put your company, and most importantly, your solution, in front of the buyer that wants to go out and buy it. And I'm a big believer that in a lot of search, it's typically dominated by people with big budgets and no strategy. The nice thing is, and the thing that I'm excited about with all these changes with Google, is that big budget, no strategy can definitely be matched with small budget and a lot of strategy. So you find that a lot of the deserving brands that really should be first, second, and third in front of their target customers, they have the best solution to the problem, are actually getting that visibility. So very long way of saying a lot of web work, a lot of paid work, a lot of SEO work, but all in the goal of getting your company, in front of future customers, getting it in front of the people that have the exact pain point that you know how to solve and that you've solved time and time again.
I love that. Let's maybe just get into how you do this. So obviously, people can hire you to do this
Yep.
for them, but maybe for those people who are really scrappy, like let's talk about maybe how they can get started on this themselves. Like, what would maybe be this first step? Like, are you doing some SEO research, or where are you recommending they start?
Yeah, and I would say that's where my background, even before this, is funny. I'm probably the only finance person that started a marketing agency that at least I know of. I'm sure there are others, but it puts an interesting spin on it that I don't ever really start with the marketing conversation. We start with the business conversation. And I would say the best place to look for any content ideas, take search, take everything out of it. Content should be a little piece of thing on your website, your LinkedIn, whatever, that answers a question that a customer is probably thinking to themselves, or helps solve a problem that a customer probably has, and puts you into their view so they can consider you for any type of future search, right? If you think of content that way, the best place to talk is your customers. And I think it's a funny trend that I see that a lot of marketers, but also I would say a lot of companies, we work with marketing people, they're always so like, are you you yeah, I guess it makes sense that I should go talk to more customers. And I would even say, go talk to sales team, go talk to the people that are closest to the customer and do that. Because as a marketing agency and as a marketer, you get so in the weeds of, oh, well, I think this is going to be the case, or the data says this. And I always like validating with the customer. So one of the first things we always do with a client is sit down, understand their business, understand where leads come from, where deals come from, why do people buy from you, on what consistency. And what I would say is get a really good understanding of what the ideal customer journey looks like from being found all the way to actually closing that deal. If you can map that out as an agency or a marketer, you quickly understand what those inflection points are. What are the 1 to 2 to 3 pain points that cause somebody to even look for us to begin with? But what are the 1 to 2 to 3 things that somebody's going to look for right before they're ready to make a decision, right? Understanding intent throughout that process. And I would say that's the most interesting thing that we do, that it's a little bit different. Before we ever run a technical SEO audit, before we ever open up your Google Ads account and look in there, before we ever look at the back end of your website, we're having a conversation about what's already worked for you. So I would say definitely if it's a scrappier person that wants to try and do it themselves, go talk to all the customers that you have, and have them help you put a frame of reference on it. How did you find us? Why did you even look for us to begin with? What made you choose us over X, Y, and Z? And get a really good understanding of the language the customer's using, what they're talking about, why they're talking about it, and ultimately why they made that decision. then the job's on you, and I'm sure we'll cover it. How do you turn all that into content? What type of content should it be? Should it be a podcast like this? Should it be a video? Should it be a blog? You can go down a lot of different rabbit holes, but I
Yeah.
always say start with the business and start with the sales side of things. Track it from when a customer finds you to when they pay you and figure out what made them make that decision.
Yeah, I love that advice. I remember one of the first jobs I ever got, I did videography before I did this, and a company, they just hired me. They're like, "Will you go interview our customers? We want you to get testimonials on our website." So I went and like when I filmed these testimonials, I learned so much talking to them and they offered me a job after. Like I learned so much to be able to market their company doing those testimonials.
I love it. And it's the easiest way and it's the simplest way, right? I'm sure my phone, actually, I've been trying to do better about not leaving it in the office. But if my phone was around, I'm sure your phone's close by as well, unless you're doing something like me. But even I got the Apple Watch on, right? What, 5 seconds I could call a customer? You could as well to say, okay, help me do this marketing. I think it's funny that sometimes the simplest actions like that can actually have the biggest impact on what you're trying to do. And my fun story about that is we just went through a rebrand. We had like a new logo, new tagline, a couple other things. I'll have to send it to you after this. It's not live yet, but I think it's pretty good. And we had our team on the call and we were all validating what we liked and didn't like. And I just took a photo. I sent it to 15 customers over text. Like 7 of them got back to me within 5 minutes. And I was like, great. They all like number 2. We're doing number 2. And I remember the guy we were working with was like, I've never seen anyone do that. And I was like, again, customer's point of view on everything. I'm going to go to the customer before anything else because that's where the answers are.
I feel like this is for anyone who's been in marketing for a while, that just like is something I feel like we talk about, but no one actually does.
Yeah. You almost have to break the mold because I think even the marketing side of brain turns on me of like, well, I know more about marketing. I'm not going to let the average person do it. But whenever you look at the customers and the clients that we have, and you take a step back and say, well, I want more of those people. Well, I'm going to help them make the decision as well. I want them to have a seat at the table because they're going to point me in the right direction. And there's so much nuance that they can't share that in making a decision, they can start to point me in the right direction. So I do that a lot, probably overkill, but I always recommend anytime you got questions on your marketing, 9 times out of 10, don't go to a marketer, go to a customer, go to a client, go to somebody that's considered you and see what they think.
Yeah, that's the best way you're gonna learn. So let's start talking about actually maybe creating this content or like making a plan to create the content. So you already understand your ideal customer. One thing you mentioned when we chatted earlier is this pillar versus pebble
Yep.
content. And I love that. Do you mind just explaining what that is?
Yeah, I'll do the best I can without a visual, but I love this pillar and pebble methodology, and it's something that we utilize quite a bit whenever we go work with client sites. So whenever we go into a client site, we'll go find, let's say, the one keyword that they want to rank for. There was a company that we were working with that they really wanted to rank for the keyword ICHRA, which is a type of healthcare. All they wanted to rank for. So we built a great page on their site, a pillar page, just ranking for ICHRA, the most bottom of funnel, non-branded, very difficult keyword to go after, because what you can do with that and the way that you can get rankings is then you can start to internally link a bunch of different content, what we call pebbles, to that pillar page. So, and I'll even do it now for the heck of it. If I type in ICHRA, I can see, ironically, our page pop up underneath ADP, which is fun. But as I scroll down, I can see the people also ask section. Guide to ICHRA. How does ICHRA work? What's the pros? What are the cons? What is the difference between ICHRA and HSA? I could go on and on and on. All those little questions are what people ask really high top of funnel. The pillar is what people might be searching right before they convert, or it could be ICHRA company or ICHRA software, one of those things, right? Always separate pillar and pebble, and I think it's an easy framework, but what we're really doing is separating intent. If I am looking to read about ICHRA, I don't want to have a page with a bunch of calls to action and conversions. I'm not ready. I'm trying to understand what ICHRA is, why I need to do it. Do I need a software, which typically you do? Or when I'm ready to purchase, maybe I'm just going to type in ICHRA companies and go search for that. Where I think most people go wrong with content is they only go after ICHRA companies. That's the keyword I want. I'm going to put all my time and attention into that. You might see results in years, right? That time scale on a very difficult, and this gets granular in a search, but on a difficult topic like that, it can take a long time. But if you think about pebbles, there are easy ways to do a couple different things. One, to support your site with supporting content quickly, to answer the questions of your customers today. Doesn't take long to write an article that is going to be answering a question. You can pull that from your chat team or support team as well to say, here's the top 10 questions we were asked this week, and go write content on that. But the other thing is it arms a broader marketing team to go distribute that. So I always say with us, granted, we don't offer it as a service, but we offer it as advice. Hey, as soon as we write this piece of content, post it on your blog, distribute it, put it on LinkedIn, put it on somewhere else, give it some more life. It will do great on your website. It will do even better elsewhere. So I'm a big believer of pillar pages, sometimes referred to as money pages as well. That's where the conversion should happen. That's the place that should be optimized. That's the place that should have the call to action. But as you have your pebbles, your supporting pieces, those are your little pieces of content. You can have 40, 50, 60 if you wanted, that are going to go out, draw on the attention, internally link back to that pillar page and support a much more realistic buyer's journey than just giving one person one option to convert.
Would you say maybe the goal is on that pillar page, because it's probably like really competitive, that you're not maybe gonna rank number one, but it's all those other pebble pages
It's
that are
all the other pebble pages. The number of times that we have run, I mean, we do it for nearly everybody, a pillar and pebble methodology, and the pillar never sees the light of day, but the pebbles do. They bring in a lot of site traffic because they're much easier to rank for. And slowly but surely, they'll bring people over to the pillar page and convert. That's happened time and time again in a very normal cadence. So I would say that pillar page, aim for it to be valuable. Don't worry too much about the rankings. Aim for it to, if anything, start a sales conversation. Let the pebbles do a lot of that supporting work as well. And I think pleasantly surprised over time, you'll see a lot of those pieces begin to rank on the pillar side of things.
Have you found with that pebble content, is it like what's the best format you find that works well on those pages?
For the pebble,
Hmm.
I always say, as you think about a company, as you think about any of our clients, they all offer services. There's a way for them to make money. I always understand that. I get that. This will sound odd though. I try and take a lot of that off the table. Consider yourself a media company. Consider yourself a magazine, whatever is easiest to put in a frame of reference. If you were a magazine, what would you write on that's interesting? What would you write on to get people's attention? What are you going to be writing on that can grab the attention and keep somebody in your magazine, let's say, right? If you think about it in that regard, those pebbles, they become a little bit more editorial, a little less listicle or how to. They become a little more engaging and a little more exciting. They're just pieces of content that should bring me to the site. And if the site's set up correctly, it's going to do the rest of the work. I'm writing on things that are just interesting to read, engaging to read, exciting to read. So I would say they take a lot of different forms. They ultimately are going to take the form of what's that reader looking for. Different industries might rely on different styles. If we're ever writing anything in the financial world, they always have an executive summary at the top because nobody reads the full article. But in a different world, let's say a supplementation world, we had a company for a while. Everything's editorial, fun, it's lighthearted, it's a much different writing style, but always try and match it. And I would say, people will write longer Instagram posts, but I read them. They're engaging, they're fun, they tell a story. Think about it as an extended Instagram post. It's something that's going to grab my attention. There's probably a visual there as well. I certainly wouldn't say there's a perfect style to write with, other than break away from this idea that, SEO content and content is different. There are, sure, small differences, but whenever it comes to it, if you're hiding under that guise to say, well, nobody's going to need to read this content anyway because it's SEO content, that doesn't apply. Should be read. It should have some technicalities to it that maybe another piece of content wouldn't, but we're continually trying to, shrink the gap between editorial magazine content and what works on SEO. There's always going to be a gap. There's always going to be a little bit of room that we can't fill, but the more exciting that we can make our content and then put it in front of people consistently with Google or search, you get the best of both worlds. So I would say they take on a number of different elements, but we try and stay away from anything too structured, too listicle, too how to. Make it engaging and think more like a magazine or a publisher. What are people going to read and what excites them?
I'd love to get your take on, I've heard people have two different kind of approaches to SEO. Some people maybe start with the keyword research. They're like, I know this is going to be a good keyword to rank on. It's applicable to us. And I have others that are like, no, let's just find really good topics that are interesting to talk about
Yeah.
and then find keywords after. Where do you fall there?
I fall more on the what are people looking for and find keywords to support that article. And this is something that I've changed tune on quite a bit, especially since COVID. Google is really smart. I don't think anyone doubts that. They are going to put the right article in front of the right person, almost not dependent on the exact search term that you use. If I search for X, but I really mean Y, Google is going to deliver me Y content and I'm going to be none the wiser. I see it happen all the time. So as I say that, I it's a little bit of both, but I would say, what are people actually interested in reading? A really good example, we had a local client, more services, more small business, but I think the story can be really applicative. They really wanted to rank for a keyword. I think it was holistic medicine. No one searches for that. They were all about it, but no one really searches for that. They all search functional medicine. So we started creating content for that. 6 months down the line, we look into Google Search Console. They still had a lot of people searching, ironically, for holistic medicine, but they all got pointed to the functional medicine page and Google put them in the right spot. So I would say, in a very weird way, keywords have, it's not just the one keyword. Google will capture variations in your search history and all things considered and deliver you something unique. If you take that into account, the content has to be valuable as a standalone. It has to be valuable on its own. I would always start with, what's the pain point? What's the question? What's the comment? What's the support ticket that you're going to turn into a really good blog? Or what's the, trying to think of the gong? What's the sales call recording or Fathom or something like that? What's the sales recording that you're going to turn into a piece of content? Start there, write a great piece of content. And if you do it right, it's fairly easy to go back and optimize and say, okay, I think this keyword actually applies for what we're looking for. Let's strategically place this in the right spots.
Yeah, your approach to like taking a sales call and turning that into content really resonates with me. Do you have any other tips on
Oh
getting that?
man. I always say, back when we were a lot smaller and I was more involved, I always passed over sales calls kind of as I wore multiple hats. I'd be the sales and marketing person. So I'd take the sales hat off and put the marketing hat off. I'd pass it to myself, but a lot of that would turn into LinkedIn posts. So almost anytime I got off a sales call, if there's a learning lesson or something, I'd try and turn it into a LinkedIn post and answer that question. I would say the easiest place is, what are the questions your prospects are asking? Go talk to your sales team and see their top 5 to 10. And I would say their top 5 to 10, you'll find one or two that are asked a lot. Okay, maybe that's not a blog. Maybe that's a resource. Maybe it's a downloadable. Maybe it's a webinar, right? I would say the propensity of how important that question is and how often it gets asked changes the type of content that I typically recommend to create. Right, we are not going to create a webinar. We're not going to do a podcast or anything. That's not part of our services. But most of our questions we can answer within a piece of content, and that's good. But sometimes we'll come across something. One of our clients gets a lot of searches for a cookbook. Okay, great. Let's not make that a blog. Let's make that a downloadable, whether it's gated or not. That's up to them. Let's put it on the site. Let's make it something a little bit more above and beyond. So I would say that's good. I also think a very fun, but also very eye-opening thing is to go talk to 5 to 10 of your company or customers and say, how would you explain what we do? And you'll quickly realize that it's pretty darn different. It's not always a bad thing or a good thing. There could be some misalignments with the brand. That would be a bad thing. But the good things would be, oh, so that's how you talk about it. That's how all of your friends talk about it or think about it. It's interesting. I always say, as an agency or as a marketer, I'm always going to think about my product, my service that I'm representing in a certain light, my idealistic light. Talk to a customer and get humbled real quick to understand how they actually think about it. But in the reality, you got to go right for that. And I would say a lot of marketing, a lot of great marketing is not creating content for the way people should be searching, the way people should be buying. It's creating content for the way people actually buy and actually search. It's matching your marketing to how people actually do business, make their own decisions. And truly, that's some of the best marketing out there. So the other thing I would always say, sales calls are fun because you can turn them into a testimonial. Testimonial calls are fun to turn into a piece of content, maybe like a debrief on, hey, we had this problem, we did this. Some of the other content that's performed really well for our clients as well, to give a thought leadership, doesn't rank very well, but people call it out supposedly on their sales calls. What's happening internally? Hey, we just implemented this new tool. Here's what we learned and didn't. Gives the brand a personality that puts you in front of customers in a certain light. So all sorts of fun things. But again, we're coming back to it. Talk to customers.
Exactly. It's a recurring theme. It's really important. So let's talk about like what has changed in content and SEO in the last year. One thing I want to make sure we talk about is the AI search. That is something that people ask me about, my clients all the time. And I want to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So let's start with AI search. It's cool. I think the funny thing is that it's kind of just a summary tool. And it summarizes the top 5 to 10 pieces of content on Google and still gives them the same visibility. It's ironically not changed many of our client results, which I think is interesting. It's actually put them in a good spot to say, Google likes our content so much they're showing us in the AI snippet overview, which is cool. I'm really curious to see what Google does with that. This is more just like no data to back this, more opinion.
Yeah.
ChatGPT came out, I don't know when, call it 2022 maybe. I'm fuzzy on years. And it's like Google hurried to push something out and they were like, "Oh, well, we don't like that, but we do, but we don't." And they've gone back and forth on the features that they release and what to do. I'm really interested to see how that sticks. What I would say though, and I was explaining this to somebody the other day, the reason we're building the search economy, and as we've coined it, and the reason that I wouldn't forever call us an SEO agency, but a search agency. SEO is search engine optimization. That lends itself to Google. There are a lot of other ways to search. And we've had a lot of conversation with clients of, "Hey, I got a lead from ChatGPT." And I'm like, "There's no way you did." And like the client will screenshot and show, and like they Googled, "I'm looking for this, help me find a vendor that can help me solve this issue." And sure enough, our client popped up. So I'm finding that a lot of things are coming back to just what I would say. You have all these different search engines, but you have a basis of what I would call true information. Any search engine is going to go look for that information to find the best answer, the best solution. It's ultimately up to us to keep writing content that helps position our brand, our domain, our recognition as, okay, that's the best outcome possible. And I think that's where a lot of content goes is how can we continue to position our brand, our business as the best alternative, or be really specific about what we can solve. So any of these search engines, not just Google, can help us help put us in front of the right people. Everyone always says Google's dying. I think Google's died like 15 times in the past decade or so. So jokes aside, sure, Google might die, Bing might die, a lot of other search engines might die, but searching for things, I don't think will die. I think we'll always try and grab our phones or grab whatever we have and search for an answer, search for a solution when we have a problem. I don't see that action ever going away. So as we think about it, it's how do we keep evolving for where people are searching and where people are finding answers and make sure our customers are there to be really representative of what's happening. For now, it's still a lot of Google. I would say it's a lot more Bing, which is an interesting thing. It was very under the radar, but a lot of corporate style companies, if they have Microsoft, they're now forced to use Bing. So that way they can only search on Bing at work. So Bing and
Oh,
Google aren't all that different. But what I've encouraged a lot of people is that if you're running a lot of paid search and it's working, you have a very B2B tech offer, test out Bing, see what happens, because a lot of people have to search there. But if you're not running actively paid on Bing, you're only going to get people on Google. That's going to be outside of office hours. But the one corporate job I had, I could only use Bing. You couldn't install any other Google device. So that's another cool little trinket of finding out where people are searching and tailoring our strategies to that. It's not just Google. You have to be considerate of a lot.
yeah. Well, that's a new nugget for me. I didn't know that. That's so
Yeah, it's
cool.
interesting. Yeah, I mean, I've I felt like there would be more noise, but Microsoft published something that essentially under the radar said organizations have the option to turn Chrome off so nobody can use it. And I think a lot of people did for safety and regulation, whatever Microsoft's value prop is. And what that's done is turned Bing into a much larger search engine for a lot of business and B2B searches pretty much overnight.
Wow. I want to come back to something you said earlier about getting leads through ChatGPT.
Yeah,
We've seen that at our company
nice.
too, which it blows my mind. And sometimes I have clients ask, they're like, how can we get leads through ChatGPT? And I don't know if this is the case for you, but at least for me, I feel like a lot of it is still really black box. Like we don't know how it's happening, but the same principles apply. Like just keep creating good content that is searchable and helpful, and the results will come.
So we had talked about it earlier, all the algorithm updates and all the things that have happened this year. What are some of those truths that still apply for what makes this work? And writing and creating good content is certainly up there. And I would say good content is not just answering a question, but it's answering a question with what I always call a wedge. What's your unique take or unique angle? Writing content that already exists on the internet is not going to last very long. But if you can write something that has a very unique taste or take or something that's unique to your brand or business, suddenly you stand out. You have a different take, you have a different opinion. And I'm finding that a lot of the stuff that was indexing, I guess is the word in ChatGPT, it leaned thought leadership, but it was certainly not edgy in a weird way, but edgy in the sense of I took a stance in this article and it showed up. But the pendulum swings, right? It's a black box. The other things that popped up were like some very basic like pillar pages. Like they did not take much of a stance because by nature they didn't need to, or it was in a very or just a characteristically boring industry to where there's not much edginess. They still showed up. So I'm really curious to see how that works and how that plays out. It's definitely a black box. I can give you opinions, but I think if anybody does, they're probably guessing.
Yeah.
It comes back to that though, right? ChatGPT will even probably come and go at some point. So will Bing, so will Google. How we write good content and put our information in front of other people, our future customers, that still is going to need a lot of thought. And I think if you do that right, the rest will fall in line.
Yeah. Are there any other updates you've noticed in the last year that have just influenced the way you approach content?
I would say websites are getting simpler, and that's always been my goal and my want for a lot of our customers as well. But I would say every website should have a homepage. They should have an about page sharing their team, vision, mission. And then they should think of a third tab on their site to be, I'm just probably going to say resources, but I would say challenge yourself in your marketing department, not only to do resources, but when I click that tab on your site and it opens up to articles and newsletters and whatever you call it, whatever it may be, it should feel like I'm going to school for whatever you do. So, over the course of time, our goal is that if you go click resources on our site, you're going to get a degree in SEO, a degree in paid, a degree in web, right? We have a lot of work to do that as well, but we're thinking in that direction because I would say brands, if they can focus on educating their customers, educating their visitors, you'll get a lot more business. That's the way content should be done, but it gives you more clarity around the content strategy of I'm not just going to write against the super hot topic trend. I'm going to write about the learning lesson that's going to be applicative for the next 5 to 10 years. I would say that highlight your services. How are people going to buy from you? And then I must still die on this hill. Only one way to contact you on the main site, landing pages aside. The number of sites that we audit that have a contact page and get a free audit and get this downloadable and everything, right? I have 7 options. I don't know what to choose. And depending on your service, go talk to your customers. Do they want a quote first? Is that normal in your industry? Do they want to talk to you first? Make every single call to action on your site go to ultimately one thing, whatever that direct call to action is. What's closest to revenue? Speaking, it's going to be some type of demo call or sales call or getting somebody on the phone. The site should be, we used to use the terminology, be your best salesperson. It's tailored a little bit to be your best appointment setter is maybe the way that I'll phrase it here. Get people on a call, and the website should do just that. But I would say websites are getting more simple, and I'm seeing a lot of people respond to that as well. There might be ad hoc pages. Throw those in the footer because that's for 3% of the visitors on your site. The other 97% are going to want to know what's on your homepage. What do you do? Why do you do it? What are the services? How can you make me smarter? And how can you help? Answering that is very beneficial. There was a big trend for a long time that mobile was just going to take over everything and everybody was going to search on mobile. It was going to be 100% share. No one talks about it a lot. So maybe I'm late to the party or early. I don't know. Desktop's really important. Mobile, I find a lot of people scroll, which is good. I can go in, like, engage with your brand, understand what you do, read a few blogs. But when I want to make a decision, and I always joke, my phone's not here, but my wallet is. I always say when you want to make a credit card search, and I do this exact same thing with clients, I won't flip the back. That's probably a bad idea. But when I want to make a credit card search, I am going to ask, I'll put it this way. When I make a credit card search, I'm going to search for a certain keyword and I guarantee you I'm on my computer. Very rarely do conversions happen on mobile for anything B2B. Truthfully, it's going to happen on the desktop. You might be found on mobile. Mobile's still a good thing to optimize for. Just consider that a conversion is going to take place typically on a computer that you and I are both behind and probably have been behind for a good portion of the day, 4, 5, 6 hours, right? I don't make many decisions on my phone. I make a lot more decisions on the computer. So I think that's one trend that I even thought was going to go in the opposite direction. I just figured everybody would use the phones, but realizing that it's starting to go away and go into a different direction. And I think things are stabling into what is my intent when I use a computer? What is my intent when I use my phone?
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, It's Christmas time. Like, I'm not buying stuff on my phone. It's
No.
way harder to put in the number.
Everything I mean, everything's harder, the experience is kinda terrible. The only thing I feel like I really use my phone for anymore is local search, and I feel like Google Maps is probably my number 1 tool
Yeah,
or number 1 app because I'm finding and, like, going different places, looking at reviews. That's very normal. I'm certainly not, like, considering a Christmas present to buy on my phone. That sounds terrible. I
unless
will
it's
definitely use my
Amazon.
computer. Yeah, Amazon isn't even then, maybe I'm old school, but I'm like, the screen's bigger. I'm gonna use my desktop.
Yeah, it is easier to compare things, at least that way. I wanna hop back to one thing you said about the ways to contact,
Yeah,
people. I feel like that's kind of a hot take. Do you
I
think
know.
that's still applicable to these businesses that maybe have, like, 30,000 plus dollar deals?
I mean, even take Pneuma, for instance, I think our deals would be meeting that or maybe over that in some scenarios as well. You gotta go through our site and set up a call with us. It's the only way you get in touch. Say it does a couple things, and maybe I'm a bit picky. I want people to talk to us to maybe qualify, but it always starts with a conversation. We're marketing a business, and businesses are made of people. I gotta meet you to understand what you do and if we can help you. So maybe that's picky on our end, but I would say 9 times out of 10, maybe I'll even put it this way. Maybe it's not just a contact form. Maybe you can find a way for 1 or 2, but I see too many sites with 10 to 15 to 20 different options, or every service or features or benefits page has a different call to action and a different
Okay.
form. And then I start thinking, how much confusion are you actually driving? And one of my favorite things is a customer we brought on a couple years ago had, call it 20 different forms and CTAs, different offers across the site. And the number one form that was used was the generic contact form. And every single application to that was, I don't know which one to fill. I just want to talk to somebody.
Oh,
And
no.
so, yeah, but I mean, it always sits in the back of my mind, but it helps prove out the idea of how do your customers want to buy? You might think they want a pretty sales funnel process and custom CTAs. 9 times out of 10, they probably just want to pick up a phone and talk to you. And I think that might have been the pendulum swung a little too much with COVID because everybody was online and everybody, I think, uses an excuse not to talk to one another. Sure, offers there worked and a lot of like hands off things worked, but I'm seeing time and time again, talking to customers and getting in front of them has definitely played a much larger role.
Yeah. I can see how that could get way too complicated. What role do you think that gated content has in there? Like, if I want to download an ebook, is that different? Is that okay if we have different forms for that?
Yep. I would say I always put gated content or anything else kind of in a landing page bucket because landing pages you might want and you should have some specificity for. Organic and just people coming to the site, try and simplify it, but try and make your, I would say, your forms on the site or on the landing page, excuse me, very specific to whatever you're running an ad against. I think gated content gets a lot of hate, and I hate a lot of gated content, to be fair. But there's like 5% that I don't mind. And I think finding that 5% of, I'm really close to making a decision. The way I've always thought about gated content is that I'll give you my email because I actually want you to reach out to me. What needs to be put behind that and what intent do I need to be in or what problem am I trying to solve in order to do that? And I remember earlier this year we were working through something financial and I found a website with a bunch of great resources, bunch of great services, put in my email on every form on the site because I got all their ebooks, but I was like, I'm excited to chat with somebody on the team because I think you can help. So understanding that if it's something really informational, you can gate it if you want, but it's probably not going to convert. But what's the intent of the piece of content that you have behind that gated form? And what's your strategy to get in front of them? And I think we probably overdid it, but in essence, I don't think gated content's the bad guy. I think it's we gated a bunch of invaluable content and then made everybody really upset that we gated it.
Yeah. It's like a longer blog post or something. And you're like,
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
not worth
I've had gated blog posts before, and I'm like, this is so pointless. But I've had gated 90-page PDFs that I'm like, I would happily gate that every single time, and I'd put my name into it. I'd probably pay for it, and maybe that's the signal of somebody's willing to pay for it. Then you gate it because
yeah.
it's probably valuable enough. But yeah, don't gate a blog post. And if it feels like a blog post or it can be used as a blog, probably not. Probably not something you should gate.
Yeah. I totally agree. So we're coming up on time. I have probably like one more big question I'll ask you, but I do want to give you a second. Is there anything else you want to add or any other hot takes we should talk about?
You're dangerous asking me if any other hot takes. About search, probably not. Yeah, I'd say the hot take is actually the simple one. Talk to your customers, figure out what they're talking about, what's interesting to them, what they buy against, what inspires them to make a decision, and add that into your content. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't try and go crazy. But the other thing I would say, and we've talked about this a lot today because we're doing some end of year client reviews, distribute as much as we write. We're going to be the team that creates some content for you. I'm not posting on your social because that's not what we do. But anytime we write a blog, it should be turned into a LinkedIn post and 7 people should post their variations of it. Let some of that content live on because it can be a lot more strategic, a lot more efficient. And I'd say the last thing maybe, don't worry about saying the same thing twice or even 10 times. Your customer needs to hear things 10 times to make a decision. So I think a lot of marketing is being creative about how to say the same thing over and over and over again, just with different variations.
Yeah, I agree. I love all those takeaways. So now for our last question. This one's my favorite, David, is what is your biggest content marketing ick?
Oh, content marketing ick. Probably a few. I'm an opinionated person. What I will say that still lights me up is links in Instagram posts because I feel like it's 2020, it's nearly 2025. That's never been a feature ever. Like, I don't know if you could ever click a link from an Instagram post. So we're talking what? It's now a decade into this app and probably longer, and we're still putting links in there. But my ick, I think, hidden in that is I'm a how you do small things is how you do all things. I'm very detailed. I always look at that as no one proofed that post because if someone proofed it, they would have caught it. No one looked at that. And I always think that's the biggest ick of I like moving fast. I like breaking things. I like posting a lot of content, but give things a fair read through before. But yeah, I don't know how many other people said Instagram links in Instagram posts, but
No one said that.
really, I
Yeah.
don't even know. I don't know if that even, I guess you can talk to it into content marketing.
Yeah.
Lights me up. More so because it's not a new change. Yeah, like you nodded. I
Yeah.
think that's been a feature or a lack of a feature forever.
I might take that ick and just say I'm frustrated that it isn't a feature.
Yeah,
Like I
it's
feel like
no
it,
that too though. I mean, it should be a feature, but then I think people would have links everywhere, and I would be scrolling and going to other websites randomly. That would get annoying. But yeah, it's so funny to me that somehow I still see it all the time, and it cracks me
yeah.
up. And like reputable brands will do it. I'm like, I can't copy and paste it. I can't do anything with that link, and I'm not gonna type it in. I'm not gonna like hold
No.
my phone up and click the buttons. That's not happening.
Yeah. That's so funny. It is. I mean, I see that still all the time on Instagram. People including those links and
It
what do
just
you
cracks
expect
me up. It
people to
just makes
do?
it makes me smile, and it's like, all right, well, sure, do your thing. All right, you asked. Now I gotta know yours.
Ooh, I haven't been knowing that's me this question now. um, one that's really been bugging me is just badly created AI images, either
Oh,
on
that's
blog
fair.
posts or Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever. I feel and also on Facebook. That's where I see probably the worst one is it's all the old people commenting like, "Congrats
Facebook
on
is
your baby," but
yeah.
it's not.
I so it's I would say like an ick of that is finding a blog post that's really good, but they have like some things poorly generated, and it's clearly AI. But the thing that does make me chuckle, not an ick, is that some of these AI videos are getting really good, like really good. They're gonna end up on Facebook and they're gonna confuse a lot of people. And like I'm just my mom, I'm just waiting for the day. Granted, she's not on Facebook all that much, but she'd be the one that send me something and be like, I think this is fake. You gotta validate though. And it's getting pretty tough now. I don't know.
Yeah, it is getting a lot harder. That could be a whole other
That
conversation.
could be a whole, yeah, I don't know where that one's going. I'm not the one to solve that issue. That might be somebody else. I'm gonna
Yeah.
keep writing content and talking to clients.
Yeah. Sounds good. We'll stay in our lanes. But thank you so much, David. Where can people go to find more information about
Yeah. Well, first off, thanks for having me. Thanks for jamming. I think I can't find the timer on Riverside. Sometimes I can, but I know we've been going for a bit. So it was fun to jam on all things content. Where can people find me? I would say LinkedIn's probably the best. I do post sparingly there. I need to get better. So maybe your audience can hold me accountable. It's David W. Riggs. And then really the only other real businessy outlay that I would have would be our company website, pneumallc.co. We are rebranding. The domain will change probably in February. So if you click it after February 2025, you'll be redirected, hopefully. And you'll get to our new website. And then we took a small break for our own podcast, but spinning that back up as well on a very similar topic and getting real nitty gritty on some of the search landscape. So excited for all three of those things.
Great. We'll include all those links in the show notes. So
Nice. And I would say equally physically find me in Denver. So if anybody's ever out in Denver, coffee's on me. Happy to chat content.
that's awesome. Well, thanks again, David, and we'll definitely be in touch. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Content Logistics. Make sure to subscribe to the show so you don't miss the next episode. Bye!